Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I am joined once again today by Mr. Paul Levy from Brownells. And we're going to talk about AR-18s, or AR-180s, which you guys have done an interesting reproduction sort of retro, but you didn't copy the original gun. So it's pretty obvious. This is an original AR-180. It doesn't have M-lock.
No.
Your repro's got M-lock.
That's the one thing Eugene started to not think of.
How unforesightful of him.
But they're not quite reproductions. I wouldn't say that. They're inspired by the original AR-180. So these started out with our appreciation for the operating system. Like you look at an AR-180, and it kind of looks like a trash can on the outside, but it's
a simple rifle.
But you disassemble it, and you're like, this is simple and pretty ingenious with how it operates. It borrowed from other firearms itself.
Sure.
But we're looking at that, like, how do we implement that to fit on an AR-15 loader? Because what's more popular than an AR-15 in the U.S.?
Right.
Nothing. So that was the key thing we attempted to do.
Like, the new Armalite did reproductions. They did the AR-180Bs with a polymer loader.
Yeah. But
it was an AR-180 loader, and I don't think those were particularly successful.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people wanted to be able to get their AR-15 lower elements and have a good trigger and interchangeable trigger parts. But then they wanted the upper, but they didn't want the lower, and so that's pretty much what you guys did.
So we took a lot of those, we took concepts that people want today. So like you said, they want their AR lower, they want to work with that. They want to be able to put a folded stock on it, number one, which you can do with this upper, which I'm not showing off today, of course. But then they want a free float M-lock handguard. Everything has a free float M-lock handguard. It provides the most modularity, and that was one of our design parameters, essentially. And then we also wanted to have a quick detached handguard.
And they didn't want the cool Armalite triangular proprietary scope.
I like that. I think it's pretty cool. But no, that wasn't. We wanted a monolithic Picatinny rail like people expect on their current or their modern production AR-15s.
Right.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this was to kind of get into the door with your own piston system.
Yeah, and it's really that customer that's shopping around and they have a few parameters. They want to be able to fold their rifle, their setup. They prefer to have a side charger versus like an AR-15 system. And one of their aspects is I want to have a piston. Maybe I'm not a big fan of the AR-15 operating system. There's a few of those parameters that customer's looking for.
Okay. And how popular has that been? Do you wish you'd done an exact repro?
Oh, no. This has been quite popular. We are on the Gen 2 now, and I'll touch on those features in a little bit, but we're on the Gen 2 versions. We're hoping to get quite a few through the end of the year still. We are now the 300 Blackout, all that good stuff, but we're quite excited and quite pleased with the performance of this line.
Okay. 300 Blackout makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
A gun that's strengths lie in being suppressed.
Yep.
Which is not one of the strengths of the AR, but 40 and 18.
While we're talking about it, here is the 300 Blackout. This is a Gen 2, so it's basically, it's a 300 Blackout. I believe it's a 10-inch barrel, so a pretty short barrel. A huge design, a hurdle. So I should say the companies that work with us on this. I should have said this at the beginning. But FM Products, Paul over there helped us design it, as well as Dean over at PWS. So awesome job, guys. PWS currently manufactures and assembles these test fires. Every 180 upper gets test fired. And Dean did a lot of the work to shorten the gas system. So it's taking it from 223, Wild was actually the chamber on these. But taking that to 300 Blackout is not as simple as just shorten everything. There's a lower pressure round. Dean had to enlarge the sides of the piston because otherwise it doesn't have enough energy to operate the system. So you can see how short that piston is.
Yeah,
it's out here towards the muzzle, it just doesn't work. So you got to get that super short where the pressures are still pretty high with both. And it has to work with sub and
supersonic. There's an engineering challenge.
So we went from, on the Gen 1, where only the short model had an adjustable gas system, all of them now have an adjustable gas system, so people can tweak that. For really, with 300 Blackout, it's supersonic, subsonic, and then whether or not they're going to be suppressed or not suppressed by either of those. So there's really 4 variables thrown in there, and all of them have different...
significantly change the gas curve, the pressure curve on those things.
Yeah, but it works fantastic. Dean did an awesome job developing that system, and if you want a suppressed system on a AR lower and then have a folding stock, and you can have your system be pretty tiny, no vibration. spacious. It's
Okay. I never looked at these all that closely for my own sake because they weren't exact reproductions of the AR-180. But I guess the thing is, these rifles, while they're kind of expensive today, they're not expensive enough to justify making a new one. Like, you can still just go out and buy one of these. Like, you'd have to have a lot of people who want to buy them and don't want originals.
So we get that's our most common question is, why don't you make a reproduction 180? Because they see our AR stuff and like, well, you're doing it there, what can you do it there? It's not as simple as the AR. The AR has a lot of existing stuff we can rely on. There's bolt carrier groups, the barrels. We don't have to change a whole lot. The core design is there in the dimensions. The 180, that's almost an entirely stamped gun. The hammer, the trigger mechanism is all stamped. The ejection port cover, we went to polymer. The rear sight housing, that would be insane today to reproduce. Then if you did it in any other way, it wouldn't be a correct reproduction.
Right, you have to make it perfect, or else the people who want reproductions are going to be like, oh, that's a lame reproduction, I don't want it.
And like you said, you could do it, but you're going to be $3,000 or $4,000. But you can buy an original Sterling for probably like $1,300,
right,
and be quite happy with it. So we couldn't produce a reproduction AR-180 for less than the originals, and that kind of defeats the purpose.
It may be a little counterintuitive for some people who figure that if it's modernized, it's more work, and if it's old style, it must be less work.
Yeah, there is, though, a healthy aftermarket, it seems like already developing, where people take the handguard and are affixing a polymer handguard and front sights to these. So more power to them. That's awesome. I love to see that. That probably won't make its way into a production piece, but we love that, seeing those aftermarket mods and that sort of thing done. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Any plans to scale that up to like 7.62?
That has been discussed. That was originally in one of our talks. As you know,
AR-16.
The original design, the Stoner design was in 308. So there's nothing like, there's no prints drawn up or anything like that. But we've talked about it. That would be pretty cool. There's some other calibers that might be coming in development. Right now, we're just trying to get stuff produced and get out the door, and then we'll kick off development on some other changes early next year.
Like what? Can you tell us?
You'll probably see some pistol caliber stuff.
Okay.
So that'll probably be first. And there's some other. Really, it's got so many possibilities for it. We're quite excited about it. I probably shouldn't say anything.
Sorry, guys. I tried to coax as much as I could. It would be awesome to see a reproduction AR-16.
Yeah, that would. That would be pretty cool.
We've talked previously with the AR-10s and 15s. I unfortunately suspect the 16 is a rifle that not enough people would recognize to be a successful large-scale rifle.
It's kind of hard to find many photos of it. It's extremely rare.
There are two of them.
Yeah.
there are two surviving AR-16s, and we know where they are.
Yeah. But the nice thing there, if we were to do a 308, I'll get way ahead of myself here, but if we were to do that, the nice thing is it could affix to a standard DPMS 308 pattern lower. Arrow precision makes the M5 lower. We know what that is. It's a known value. We could fix it on there, and we know our parameters we're working with.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that was kind of a hurdle with this system, is getting it to fit on an AR lower and have the system reciprocate and be able to travel far enough. We had to shorten the carrier, actually. The original 180 carrier was a little bit longer. It actually travels a bit further in the receiver. So that was a big design hurdle. The cam pin on the side, since it's on the left-hand side of the carrier, it can't go down too far because that interferes with the magazine feed lips. So the carrier is extremely thin right there. So the carrier has to be to a certain hardness. And one thing we found during testing was if you nitride the carrier, I saw this come up on some comments from customers like, why don't you nitride the carrier? We do a phosphate finish. And we don't do that because it changes the hardness when you nitride, especially in thin areas like that. And it's tougher to control. When we heat treat it the first time, we know the hardness and it's good. If we were to nitride it, it can change it, make it too brittle. And what we would find is after extensive firing, the cam pin would bulge down that portion of the carrier because it became too brittle. So, stuff like that you just don't expect to run into. It had to change a little bit from the original design just to fit on the arrow.
The nice thing about doing a modernization like that instead of a reproduction is you can change anything you want. You can make those little tweaks to make it a better system.
Yeah, exactly. And it's light, too. We kept the Picatinny rail. It's not too much higher than a standard AR-15. We didn't want to have something that was like way up here, and then you got to get different sight heights and all that stuff. So you can take your standard height AR rear sights or optics and be fine with it. And again, we still wanted to keep it with those same design parameters as the original. And anything Armalite, it's got to be light, handy, modern materials. We felt we did that pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, from a modern perspective, it's a cool system.
Yeah, we think so. We're pretty proud of it.
I like my originals.
Yeah, I do have an original. There's a place in my heart for the 180, for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by to take the time and talk about some of this. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding with a lot of people about what goes into production and reproduction of various systems. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.